The ships came on a Tuesday morning. Park Dae-ho was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alarm started. He was a general now, but old habits died hard. He still woke up at 5, still ran 3 miles before breakfast, and still preferred his coffee black and bitter. The alarms changed everything. Within an hour, every telescope on Earth pointed at the sky. Within 2 hours, every news channel showed the same image. 12 massive ships hung in orbit above the planet. They were beautiful in a terrible way, silver and curved, like drops of liquid metal frozen in space. Each one was larger than any city on Earth. Dae-ho stood in the emergency command center beneath Geneva. Screens covered every wall. Scientists shouted numbers at each other. Politicians demanded answers that nobody had. But Dae-ho stayed quiet. Dae-ho. Dae-ho. He watched. He waited. That was what he did best. The message came 6 hours after the ships arrived. It was simple and clear. Broadcast in every language on Earth at the same time. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Concord. We come in peace. We wish to speak with your leaders. The world held its breath. 3 days later, Dae-ho found himself in the main chamber of the United Nations. He was not supposed to be there. He was military, not diplomatic. But someone important had decided that Earth needed soldiers in the room, even if those soldiers had to wear suits and smile politely. He stood near the back wall, watching the alien delegation enter. There were 5 of them. 4 were guards, tall and silent, their gray skin smooth like polished stone. The 5th was different. He was shorter, thinner, and he wore robes of deep purple. His eyes were large and black, without any white. When he smiled, he showed no teeth. "I am Ambassador Vorik," the alien said. His voice was soft and pleasant. "I speak for the Galactic Concord." Dr. Kang Yuna stood near the front of the human delegation. She was the lead xenolinguist, which meant she studied alien languages. Of course, until 3 days ago, there were no alien languages to study. Now she was the most important person in the room. She had spent 72 hours without sleep, learning everything she could about the aliens' communication patterns. She had noticed things that others missed. Small things. The way Vorik paused before certain words. The way his guards moved their hands when they were nervous. She noticed that they were very nervous now. Ambassador Vorik began his speech. He talked about the Galactic Concord. He explained that it was a coalition of 12 spacefaring species, united for peace and cooperation. He talked about the wonders of the galaxy. He talked about ancient civilizations and technologies beyond human imagination. Then he made his offer. "Earth is young," Vorik said. "Your species has only recently discovered space travel. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are threats you cannot imagine. The Concord wishes to offer Earth a place under our protection." He waved his hand, and holographic images appeared in the air. They showed massive shield generators, surveillance satellites, and warships. They showed alien soldiers standing guard over peaceful cities. "Under the protective mandate," Vorik continued, "Earth will receive full access to our defensive technologies. We will station a fleet in your solar system. We will build shields around your planet. In exchange, we ask only for cooperation, small tributes, political coordination, nothing that would harm your way of life." The humans in the room looked at each other. Some seemed excited. Others seemed worried. Most seemed confused. Dae-ho watched Vorik's face. The alien was smiling, but his large black eyes kept moving. He looked at the exits. He looked at the guards. He looked everywhere except directly at the humans. He was afraid, Dae-ho realized. But afraid of what? The Secretary General of the United Nations stood up. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She asked the obvious questions. What kind of threats? How much tribute? What did political coordination mean? Vorik answered smoothly. The threats were many, he said. Asteroids, solar flares, hostile species on the edges of known space. The tribute would be minimal. Resources, mostly. Technology sharing. Political coordination simply meant that Earth would consult with the Concord before making major decisions. It all sounded reasonable. It all sounded generous. Dr. Kang Yuna watched Vorik carefully. She had studied his language patterns for 3 days. She knew when he was confident and when he was uncertain. Right now, he was uncertain. His pauses were too long. His word choices were too careful. He was hiding something. The questions continued for an hour. The aliens had answers for everything. They were patient and polite. They acted like parents explaining something simple to children. Finally, there was a pause. The Secretary General looked around the room, asking if anyone had more questions. Daeho stepped forward. The room went quiet. People turned to look at him. He was not supposed to speak. He was just military support. But nobody stopped him. He walked to the center of the chamber and stood directly in front of Ambassador Vorik. The alien was taller than him, but Daeho did not look up. He kept his eyes level, his voice calm. "You offer us protection," Daeho said. "You say the galaxy is dangerous. You say there are threats we cannot imagine." Vorik nodded, his smile fixed in place. "That is correct." Daeho let the silence stretch for a moment. Then he asked his question. "From who?" The smile on Vorik's face flickered. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Daeho to see the fear behind it. "I am sorry," Vorik said. "Protection from who?" Daeho repeated. "You mentioned threats. You mentioned hostile species. But you have not named a single one. You have not shown us any evidence. You have not explained why Earth specifically needs protection right now, at this exact moment." He took another step forward. "So I ask again, protection from who?" The chamber was completely silent. Every human in the room was watching. Every alien was frozen. Ambassador Vorik's large black eyes blinked slowly. His guards shifted their weight. One of them reached towards something at his belt, then stopped. "The threats are numerous," Vorik said finally. "It would take time to explain them all." "We have time," Daeho said. Vorik looked at his guards. He looked at the exits. He looked at the ceiling, as if hoping for rescue from above. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we should take a short break. I need to consult with my superiors." And in that moment, everyone in the room understood something important. The aliens had come with a script. They had expected humans to be grateful. They had expected humans to accept their generous offer without asking difficult questions. They had not expected this. Dr. Kang Yuna watched Vorik retreat toward his guards. She watched the way his hands trembled slightly. She watched the way his smile had completely disappeared. She had studied languages all her life. She knew that sometimes the most important thing was not what people said, but what they did not say. The aliens had not answered the question, and that was an answer all by itself. The aliens asked for 3 days to consult with their superiors. General Park Daeho gave them 2, but he did not waste those 2 days waiting. Deep beneath the mountains of South Korea, there was a facility that did not exist on any map. It had no name, no address, and no official budget. The people who worked there called it simply the room. Captain Lee Tae-soo had worked in the room for 7 years. He was a former naval strategist who had grown bored with ships that sailed on water. Now he tracked ships that sailed between stars, or at least, he tried to. Until last week, there had been nothing to track. Now his screens were full of data. "The alien ships are talking to each other constantly," he told General Park. "Encrypted signals, tight beams. They think we cannot hear them." Park raised an eyebrow. "Can we?" Tae-soo smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We can hear everything. Understanding it is the problem." That was where Agent Chohana came in. Hannah was 32 years old. She had black hair cut short, glasses that were always slightly crooked, and a mind that worked differently from other minds. She saw patterns where others saw noise. She found order where others found chaos. She had cracked encryption systems that entire governments had failed to break. Now she sat in front of the largest screen in the room, watching alien symbols scroll past. "Their encryption is good," she said without looking up. "Better than anything we have. But they made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Park asked. "They assumed we were primitive." Hannah pushed her glasses up her nose. "They are using the same encryption for everything. Ship to ship. Ship to ground. Diplomatic messages, military orders, all the same system. She typed something, and the scrolling symbols stopped. If they had used different systems, I would never have enough data. But because they used one system for everything, I have millions of samples. And with millions of samples, the symbols on the screen began to change. Slowly, they transformed into words. Strange words in an alien language. But words nonetheless. We can break it, Hana finished. For the next 48 hours, Hana barely slept. She worked with a team of the best cryptographers on Earth, all of them sworn to secrecy. They did not know who they were working for. They did not know why. They only knew that the future of humanity might depend on their success, and they succeeded. The decoded messages painted a disturbing picture. Captain Lee Tae-soo spread the printouts across the table in General Park's office. There were hundreds of pages. But Tae-soo had marked the important parts. The Galactic Concorde has been operating for over 10,000 years, he said. They have brought hundreds of species under their protective mandate. That sounds impressive, Park said carefully. It does, until you look at what happened to those species. Tae-soo pulled out a chart. It showed the technological development of 12 different civilizations over time. Each line started at a different point, but they all did the same thing. They rose steadily, reaching toward space travel and advanced technology. Then they hit the same point on the chart. And they stopped. Every species under the mandate stops advancing, Tae-soo said. No new weapons, no new spacecraft, no expansion beyond their home systems. They just stay where they are. Forever. Park studied the chart with cold eyes. That is not protection. That is a cage. It gets worse. Tae-soo pulled out another document. It was a translated transcript of a conversation between two alien commanders. Park read it slowly. His face showed nothing, but his hands tightened on the paper. The conversation discussed something called the Integration Protocol. It described how the Concorde identified young species that might become threats. It described how those species were approached with offers of protection. It described how their weapons were collected, their scientists were monitored, and their ambitions were quietly redirected. It described what happened when a species refused. Pacification, Park read aloud. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. We found records of at least 3 species that tried to resist, Tae-soo said. The Concorde calls them aggressive incidents. In each case, the resistance was crushed within a single generation. The species still exist, but they have no military, no space program, and no memory of ever fighting back. Park set down the document. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the mountains of Korea stood silent and strong, just as they had for millions of years. They do not protect young species from external threats, he said quietly. They protect themselves from young species. Yes, sir. And they have done this for 10,000 years. Yes, sir. Park was silent for a long moment. Then he asked, Does anyone else know about this? Only the people in this room, and Dr. Kang Yuna. She has been gathering her own intelligence. At that moment, Yuna was sitting in a small garden outside the United Nations building. The alien delegation was staying in a nearby hotel, but some of them came to the garden in the evenings. The flowers reminded them of home, one of them had said. His name was Tellus. He was young, for an alien. His gray skin was lighter than the others, and his eyes seemed softer. He was an aide, a junior member of the delegation. Nobody important, but Yuna had noticed something about him. When Ambassador Vorik spoke about the protective mandate, Tellus looked away. When the other aliens smiled their empty smiles, Tellus did not smile. When the humans asked difficult questions, Tellus seemed almost relieved. So Yuna had started talking to him. Casual conversations at first. About flowers, about Earth, about the differences between their worlds. Tonight, she decided to ask a real question. Tellus, she said softly, what does the Concorde really want from us? Tellus looked at her. For a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw something in his large black eyes. Fear, guilt, and something else, hope. You should not ask me that, he whispered. I am asking anyway. Tellus looked around the garden. They were alone. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. There is no external threat, he said. His voice was barely audible. The protection is from yourselves. Yuna felt her heart go cold. What do you mean? The Concord believes that all young species are dangerous. Not now, but eventually. Every civilization that develops technology also develops weapons. Every species that reaches for the stars also reaches for power. Tellus's hands were shaking. The mandate is not meant to protect you from the galaxy. It is meant to protect the galaxy from you. Yuna sat in silence, absorbing his words. Why are you telling me this? She asked finally. Tellus looked up at the darkening sky. Because I have watched your species for 3 days. I have seen your cities, your art, your music. I have seen the way you love and fight and dream. You are not what we expected. What did you expect? We expected primitives. We expected savages playing with fire. Tellus turned to look at her directly. We did not expect people who ask questions we cannot answer. He stood up to leave. But before he went, he said one more thing. Your general asked the right question. Ambassador Vorik has no answer for it. Neither does the Concord. For 10,000 years, no species has ever asked that question. He paused. Perhaps that is because you are different. Or perhaps, no, perhaps what? Tellus's voice dropped to a whisper. Perhaps that is exactly why they are afraid of you. Then he was gone, disappearing into the evening shadows. Yuna sat alone in the garden as the stars appeared above her. Somewhere up there, 12 massive ships waited in orbit. Somewhere up there, ancient beings made plans for humanity's future. But for the first time since the ships arrived, Yuna did not feel afraid. She felt angry, and that, she realized, was probably exactly what the aliens were worried about. The World Security Council met in secret. There were only 12 people in the room. The leaders of the most powerful nations on Earth sat around a circular table. No cameras, no reporters, no aides, just 12 humans and the truth. Captain Lee Tae-soo presented the evidence. He showed them the decoded messages. He showed them the charts of civilizations that had stopped growing. He showed them the records of species that had been pacified. When he finished, the room was silent. President Yoon Suk-jin was the first to speak. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had led Korea through 3 economic crises and 2 military threats. He did not panic easily. Are we certain this information is accurate? He asked. Yes, sir, Tae-soo replied. Agent Chohana has verified the translations multiple times. The messages are authentic. Then we are facing an enemy, said another leader. Not a protector. An enemy that has destroyed hundreds of civilizations before us. Not destroyed, Tae-soo corrected. Contained. The species still exist. They simply stop being a threat. That sounds like destruction to me. Just slower. General Park Dae-ho stood near the wall, watching the discussion. He had not spoken yet. He was waiting for the right moment. What are our options? President Yoon asked. The answers came quickly. Accept the mandate and hope for the best. Refuse the mandate and face their fleets. Try to negotiate better terms. The options were all bad. They all assumed that humanity was weak. They all assumed that the Concord held all the power. Finally, Park stepped forward. There is another option, he said. We show them what we really are. The leaders turned to look at him. Some looked confused. Others looked worried. General Park, President Yoon said carefully. We have seen their ships. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Perhaps thousands of years ahead. What could we possibly show them? In 22, Park smiled. It was a thin, hard smile. With respect, Mr. President, you have not seen everything. He walked to the center of the room and placed a small device on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of the solar system. Earth glowed blue at the center. The alien fleet appeared as red dots near the moon. Then Park touched a button, and new lights appeared. Green lights, hundreds of them. They spread across the entire solar system, in the asteroid belt, around Jupiter's moons, hidden in the shadows of distant planets, even on Earth itself, buried deep underground. For the past 60 years, Park said, humanity has been preparing for this moment. We hoped it would never come. We hoped we would meet friendly aliens. But we planned for enemies. He pointed to a cluster of green lights in the asteroid belt. This is the Fourth Fleet. 32 heavy cruisers, 112 destroyers, all built in secret, hidden among the asteroids. They are crewed by volunteers who have trained their entire lives for a war that might never happen. He pointed to lights scattered around Earth. These are orbital defense platforms. They look like communication satellites. They look like weather stations. They look like space telescopes, but each one carries weapons that can cut through starship armor. He pointed to lights deep within the planet. And these are the bunkers, underground cities that can survive anything: food, water, medicine, weapons. Enough to keep humanity alive for generations. Even if the surface is destroyed. The room was completely silent. You built all this in secret? President Yoon said finally. His voice was strange. Without telling anyone? We told the people who needed to know. The rest of the world did not need to worry about threats that might never arrive. Park's voice was calm. But the threats have arrived, and humanity is not as helpless as the Concord believes. Another leader spoke up. But even with all this, can we actually fight them? Their technology is still superior. Superior, yes, but not invincible. Park changed the display, showing technical readouts. Agent Cho Hana has analyzed their ships. She has found weaknesses. Their shields have gaps. Their communications have vulnerabilities. Their crews have not fought a real war in centuries. They do not know how to lose. He looked around the table, meeting every eye. We may not win a straight fight, not yet, but we can make them bleed. We can make them understand that conquering Earth will cost more than they are willing to pay. President Yoon studied the display for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. We need to tell the world, he said. Not everything. Not the military details. But the truth about the Concord. The people deserve to know what they are facing. If we tell them, there will be panic, another leader warned. There will be anger, Park corrected. And anger is what we need. 3 days later, President Yoon addressed the world. Every screen on Earth showed his face. Every radio carried his voice. Every human being stopped what they were doing and listened. People of Earth, he began. 3 weeks ago, ships from another world arrived in our solar system. They offered us protection. They called themselves friends. They promised safety from a dangerous galaxy. He paused. His eyes were steady. His voice was strong. They lied. He explained everything. The true purpose of the protective mandate. The fate of species that accepted it. The civilizations that had been quietly suppressed for 10,000 years. He showed evidence. He showed proof. He held nothing back. They did not come to protect Earth, he said. They came to protect themselves from us. They looked at humanity and saw a threat. They saw a species that might one day challenge their power, so they came to put us in chains before we could grow strong enough to fight. He leaned forward, and his voice grew harder. They made a mistake. They thought we were like other species. They thought we would be grateful for their offer. They thought we would accept our cage and be happy. But we are not like other species. We are humans. And humans do not accept chains. We never have. We never will. He paused again, letting his words settle. I will not lie to you. The road ahead will be difficult. We face enemies with technology and power we can barely imagine. We may suffer. We may sacrifice. Some of us may die. But we will not bow. We will not kneel. We will not let them turn us into shadows of what we could become. They came to protect the galaxy from us. Perhaps they were right to be afraid. Perhaps humanity is dangerous. Perhaps we will reach for the stars with weapons in our hands. But those weapons will be our choice. Our future will be our own. And any being that tries to take that from us will learn what humans do to those who threaten our home. He stood tall, and his final words rang out across the planet. We are not asking for war, but if war comes, we will be ready. Earth belongs to humanity, and humanity bows to no one. When the broadcast ended, the world was silent. Then, slowly, the response began. In cities across the planet, people gathered in the streets. They did not scream or panic. They stood together, looking up at the sky, where alien ships waited. They looked at each other and saw the same thing in every face. Not fear. Resolve. In the room beneath the Korean mountains, Agent Chohana watched the response on her screens. She saw crowds forming in Beijing, in Moscow, in New York, in Lagos. She saw soldiers reporting for duty without being called. She saw scientists volunteering to work on defense projects. She saw ordinary people asking how they could help. They are not panicking, she said quietly. General Park stood beside her, watching the same screens. No, they are not. What are they doing? Park watched a crowd in Seoul. They were singing. Thousands of voices, rising together, singing an old song about standing against impossible odds. They are getting ready, he said. And somewhere in orbit, Ambassador Vorik watched his own screens. He saw the same crowds, the same determination, the same fire in human eyes. He had seen many species over his long career. He had watched them accept the mandate with gratitude, with resignation, with relief. He had never seen anything like this. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Concord had made a mistake. And Vorik was beginning to understand just how badly that mistake might cost them. Ambassador Vorik returned to the United Nations exactly 1 week after President Yoon's broadcast. This time, he did not come with smiles and soft words. His face was cold. His guards stood closer, their hands near their weapons. The fear that General Park had seen before was gone, replaced by something harder, something dangerous. The chamber was different too. Before, it had been filled with curious diplomats and nervous politicians. Now, it held soldiers. Not all of them wore uniforms, but Park could see it in the way they stood, the way they watched, the way they kept their hands free and their backs to the walls. The world was watching. Every screen on Earth showed the chamber. Every human being waited to see what would happen next. Vorik walked to the center of the room. He did not sit. He did not wait for permission to speak. You have made your choice, he said. His voice was no longer pleasant. The Concord offered you protection. We offered you peace. We offered you a place among the stars. And you responded with insults and threats. He looked around the room, his large black eyes moving from face to face. You think you are strong. You think you can fight us. You are wrong. He raised his hand, and a holographic display appeared. It showed the Concord fleet in orbit above Earth. 12 massive ships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. We have weapons that your species cannot imagine. We have shields that your primitive technology cannot penetrate. We have experience. We have numbers. We have 10,000 years of victories behind us. He stepped forward, his voice rising. No species has ever successfully resisted the mandate. Not one. In all the history of the galaxy, every civilization that has stood against us has fallen. You will be no different. He paused, letting his words sink in. But the Concord is merciful. We will give you one final chance. Accept the mandate now, and your punishment will be light. A few leaders removed, a few weapons destroyed. Nothing permanent. Refuse, and we will show you what happens to species that challenge the peace of the galaxy. The chamber was silent. Everyone looked at General Park Dae-ho. Park stood near the back of the room, exactly where he had stood during the first meeting. He had not moved. He had not reacted to Vorik's speech. His face showed nothing at all. Slowly, he walked forward. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. He stopped in front of Vorik, so close that he could see his own reflection in the alien's dark eyes. You have finished? Park asked calmly. Vorik blinked. He had expected fear. He had expected surrender. He had not expected this quiet confidence. I have made the Concord's position clear, he said. Good. Park turned to face the cameras. Then let me make humanity's position clear. He touched a device on his wrist. Around the chamber, holographic displays flickered to life. They showed images from across the solar system. The first display showed the asteroid belt. Ships were emerging from hidden hangars carved into massive rocks. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Sleek warships with angular hulls and glowing engines. They moved in perfect formation, like a swarm of silver wasps. Our fourth fleet, Park said. 144 vessels. Built in secret over 60 years. Every one of them is armed with weapons you have never seen. The second display showed Earth's orbit. Satellites that had looked dead suddenly came to life. Their hulls split open, revealing massive cannons and missile batteries. Defense platforms activated across the entire planet, forming a web of fire that surrounded Earth like a shell. Our orbital defense grid, Park continued. 312 platforms. They can track your ships anywhere in near-Earth space. They can fire before your sensors even know they exist. The third display showed something else. Points of light scattered across the solar system. In the outer planets. In the deep void beyond. Places where nothing should exist. These are sensor stations, Park said. We have been watching your fleet since the moment you arrived. We know the position of every one of your ships. We know their shield frequencies. We know their weapon ranges. We know their communication codes. He turned back to face Vorik. The alien's mask of confidence was beginning to crack. Agent Chohana has been inside your systems for 2 weeks, Park said. She has read your messages. She has studied your technology. She has found every weakness, every flaw, every gap in your defenses. On cue, Agent Hana's voice came through the chamber's speakers. At the same time, her message was broadcast to every Concord ship in orbit. Attention Concord vessels. This is a demonstration of our capabilities. We have uploaded a technical analysis of your fleet's defensive vulnerabilities. Please check your navigation systems. In orbit, aboard the Concord flagship, alarm lights suddenly flashed. Officers rushed to their stations. On every screen, detailed diagrams appeared. Shield frequencies. Hull weak points, the exact timing needed to bypass their point defense systems. Back in the chamber, Vorik's gray face had gone pale. You cannot, he started. We already have, Park said. We have been inside your system since the day you arrived. We let you believe you were in control because we wanted to know your intentions. Now we know. He stepped forward again, and Vorik actually stepped back. You asked us to accept protection, so let me ask you the same question I asked before. Protection from who? Vorik's mouth opened, but no words came out. You have controlled species for 10,000 years because they were afraid, Park continued. They looked at your ships and your weapons and your numbers, and they asked themselves, what will happen to us? But humans ask different questions. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something quiet and cold. We ask, what happens to you if you try? The chamber was absolutely silent. Every human was watching. Every alien was frozen. Park straightened up. You have 12 ships in our system. We have 144. Your crews have not fought in centuries. Ours have been training for this moment, their entire lives. Your technology is advanced, yes. But technology alone does not win wars. He pointed at the displays showing Earth's defenses. If you attack, you may destroy some of our cities. You may kill millions of our people. But you will not survive the attempt. Every one of your ships will burn. Every one of your soldiers will die. And when the Concorde comes to investigate what happened, they will find nothing but debris. He paused. Or, he said, you can leave. Vorik stared at him. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the alien's shoulders sagged. The hardness in his face crumbled. What remained was something Park had never expected to see. Exhaustion and fear. You do not understand, Vorik said quietly. Even if you defeat this fleet, the Concorde will send more and more. They will never stop. They will never allow a species to defy them. It is not about you. It is about what happens if others see you succeed. Park nodded slowly. I know. That is exactly what we are counting on. Vorik's eyes widened as he understood. You want them to see, he whispered. Yes. Park's voice was calm but final. For 10,000 years, the Concord has ruled through fear. Every species believed they were alone. Every species believed resistance was impossible. But when we fight back, they will see that it is not impossible. They will see that the Concord can be challenged. He looked directly into Vorik's eyes. And then they will start asking their own questions. Vorik stood in silence. Around him, his guards looked to him for orders. He had none to give. Finally, he spoke. I need to consult with my superiors. Park shook his head. No. You need to decide. Right now. Fight and die here. Or leave and tell the Concord what you have learned. Vorik closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the fight had gone out of him. We will withdraw, he said quietly. But this is not over. The Concord will not forget this insult. Park nodded. Neither will we. Ambassador Vorik turned and walked out of the chamber. His guards followed him in silence. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floor, growing quieter until they faded completely. Around the world, billions of humans watched their screens in disbelief. The aliens were leaving, and humanity was still standing. The Concord fleet withdrew at sunset. People around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up. They watched the alien ships turn away from Earth, their massive engines glowing blue against the darkening sky. They watched until the ships were nothing but points of light among the stars. Then they watched a little longer, just to be sure. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. They stood in silence, understanding that something had changed. Something fundamental. The universe would never look the same again. General Park Dae-ho stood on a balcony at the United Nations, watching the last ship disappear. Dr. Kang Yuna stood beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Yuna broke the silence. What happens now? Park did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the future. Not tomorrow or next week, but years from now. Decades. Centuries. The Concord had existed for 10,000 years. They would not simply go away because one small species had refused them. They will come back, he said finally. Not tomorrow. Maybe not even soon. But they will come back. With more ships. Yes. And more weapons. And more determination. Park turned to look at her. We hurt their pride today. That is more dangerous than hurting their fleet. Yuna nodded slowly. So we prepare. We prepare. Park looked back at the sky. We build. We grow. We learn everything we can about the galaxy and everyone in it. And when they come again, we will be ready. He paused, a slight smile crossing his face. Besides, I do not think we will be alone. Across the galaxy, something was spreading. It started with a single transmission. The Concord had tried to classify everything about Earth, to keep the confrontation secret. But secrets are hard to keep in a galaxy full of species who had learned to listen very carefully. The first message reached a small trading station on the edge of Concord space. A young alien, barely more than a child, was monitoring routine communications when something unusual came through. It was a video file, recorded from inside the United Nations chamber. It showed a human standing before the Galactic Concord's ambassador. It showed him asking a simple question. It showed the Concord running away. The young alien watched the video 3 times. Then she copied it and sent it to everyone she knew. Within a week, the video had reached 1,000 worlds. Within a month, it was everywhere. Species that had lived under the mandate for centuries saw it. Species that had accepted their chains generations ago watched a small gray planet refuse what they had never dared to refuse. They watched the Concord retreat. They watched the impossible happen, and they began to whisper. On a jungle world called Vorn, elderly leaders gathered in secret to discuss what they had seen. Their species had surrendered to the Concord 3,000 years ago. They had forgotten what it meant to fight. But now, watching the humans stand tall, they began to remember. On an ocean planet called Mira, scientists who had been forbidden from certain research quietly reopened forbidden files. They began to study weapons again. They began to dream of freedom. On a frozen moon orbiting a distant star, soldiers who had never known war started to train. They did not know what they were preparing for. They only knew that something had changed. And everywhere, the same message spread. Earth said no. And Earth is still standing. Ambassador Vorik sat alone in his quarters aboard the flagship. The ship was 3 weeks into its journey home, but he felt no relief. He knew what awaited him. Failure was not forgiven in the Concord. Leaders who failed were removed, quietly and permanently. His door chimed. He ignored it. It chimed again. "Enter," he said finally. It was Tellus. The young aide looked thinner than before. Tired. But his eyes held something new. Something that looked almost like hope. "I thought you should know," Tellus said quietly. "The human's message is spreading. Every species in the sector has seen it by now. Some of them are starting to ask questions." Vorik closed his eyes. Questions like, what? Like the one the human general asked, protection from who? Tellus paused. There are rumors of secret meetings, hidden communications. Species that have not spoken to each other in centuries are suddenly finding ways to talk. The Conquered will stop them. They will find the communications and silence them. Perhaps. Tellus stepped closer. Or perhaps there are too many to silence. Perhaps the humans started something that cannot be stopped. Vorik opened his eyes and looked at his aide. "You sound almost hopeful." Tellus did not answer directly. Instead, he said, "Do you remember what you told me when I first joined the diplomatic corps? You said the mandate was necessary, because young species were dangerous. You said they would destroy themselves and everyone around them if we did not control them. I remember. I believed you then. I watched species accept the mandate and thought we were saving them." Tellus shook his head slowly. "But I watched the humans. I spoke with them, and I realized something." "What?" "They are not dangerous because they want power or destruction. They are dangerous because they refuse to be controlled. They would rather die free than live in chains." Tellus's voice grew quiet. "And I think that might be worth something." He turned and left before Vorik could respond. Vorik sat in silence for a long time after that. He thought about everything he had seen on Earth. The crowds who gathered without panic. The soldiers who prepared without hesitation. The leaders who refused to bow even when facing impossible odds. He thought about the question the human general had asked. Protection from who? For 10,000 years, Vorik had believed the answer was obvious. The galaxy needed protection from dangerous young species who would disrupt the peace. The mandate was necessary. The mandate was good. But now, alone in the darkness between stars, he wondered if the real answer was something else entirely. Perhaps the Concord was not protecting the galaxy from dangerous species. Perhaps they were protecting themselves from their own fear. On Earth, President Yoon Suk-jin gave his final address about the crisis. The world had celebrated for days after the aliens withdrew. There had been parades, speeches, and declarations of unity. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. For a moment, all the old conflicts seemed small and pointless, but Yoon knew that moments do not last. He knew that humanity would return to its old arguments, its old divisions, its old fears. So he stood before the cameras one last time and spoke from his heart. "We did not win today because we were stronger than the Concord. We were not stronger. We are not stronger. They could have destroyed us if they were willing to pay the price. We won because we showed them something they had never seen before. We showed them a species that would not accept chains. A species that would rather fight and lose than surrender and survive. This is who we are. This is what makes us human. We have always reached for things we could not have. We have always fought against forces we could not defeat. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we fell. But we always stood up again." He paused. letting his words settle. The Concorde will return. We do not know when. We do not know with how many ships. But they will come, and we must be ready. But we will not face them alone. Across the galaxy, other species are waking up. They are remembering what it means to be free. They are finding the courage that was taken from them long ago. We started something today. Something that cannot be stopped. Something that will spread from star to star until the entire galaxy knows the truth. He leaned forward, and his voice grew stronger. They offered us a cage and called it safety. They promised peace through submission. But humanity has never accepted chains. Not from tyrants on our own world, and not from empires among the stars. They asked who would protect us. The answer was always simple: we protect ourselves. And now, perhaps, we will protect others too. He smiled. It was not a triumphant smile, but a quiet one. The smile of a man who understood that the hardest days were still ahead, but who had decided to face them anyway. We are humans. We ask questions that have no answers. We reach for things we cannot have. We fight battles we cannot win. And sometimes, against all odds, we win them anyway. He stepped back from the podium. May we have the courage to keep asking questions. May we have the strength to keep reaching. And may we never, ever, stop fighting for what we believe in. The broadcast ended. Across the earth, people watched their screens in silence. Then, slowly, they turned to face the sky. They looked up at the stars, at the vast darkness between them, at the infinite possibilities that waited out there. They were not afraid. They were ready. General Park Dae-ho stood on the bridge of humanity's first true battlecruiser, the UEN's Resolve. The ship was still being fitted with weapons and systems, but it was nearly complete. Soon, it would be joined by others. A fleet that would carry humanity into the galaxy. Captain Lee Tae-soo joined him at the viewport. Together, they watched the stars in silence. Do you think they will come back? Tae-soo asked finally. Park nodded slowly. They will. But next time, they will not come offering protection. What will they offer? Park turned to face his officer. His eyes were calm but certain. Next time, he said, they will come asking for it. Behind them, the lights of Earth glowed blue and bright. Around them, the stars waited. Ahead of them, the future stretched out into infinity, and humanity was just getting started.